preko ratnih vođa i bitaka do izuma. Ratovanje je oblikovalo naše živote. Unaprijedile su ga tehnološke inovacije. I vojnici gurnuti do ruba. Utrka za taktičkom prednošću često je odlučujući čimbenik u ratu.
There's always a technological race in warfare.
Sophisticated new technology. Development of the first computers.
Technology has massively changed the face of warfare in the 20th century.
Ova serija prikazuje i rangira najpoznatija i najuticajnija obilježja ratovanja s inovacijama koje su promijenile pravila igre i obuzele ljudsku maštu, te u kritičnom trenutku promijenile odnos snaga. Ovo je top lista odlika modernog ratovanja. U ovom ćemo nastavku doznati najveće tajne iz ratova, te ih rangirati prema strogoj povjerljivosti, slavnom statusu, smjelosti i općenitom utjecaju na pobjedu u ratu. Prva je na našoj ljestvici tajna spletka iz Prvog svjetskog rata. Godine 1915. rat je na zapadnom bojištu ulazio u drugu godinu. Vojnicima s obiju strana nestajale su zalihe, uključujući i eksploziv.
By 1915, both the Allies, Britain and France, and Germany are experiencing great trouble in getting enough of the raw material to make explosives. Germany is facing particularly big problems because it's being blockaded by the British Navy.
Ključan sastojak u proizvodnji eksploziva bio je spoj fenol.
Phenol is what we'd now call carbolic acid. You can make a lot of things from phenol. You can make aspirin, which is one of the most lucrative drugs of the period, but you can also make explosives as well. So this is not just a simple chemical, it's a really important strategic resource, especially at the time of the First World War.
Problem je bio u tome što su obje strane trebale tu tvar, a glavni proizvođač bila je neutralna zemlja, Amerika. Na 10. mjestu naše top liste tajna, njemački je plan o otimanju saveznicima zalihe fenola. Postao je poznat kao velika spletka s fenolom. Rat. Prvi svjetski rat. Mjesto. New York, SAD. Tajna. Njemačka urota da preuzme američke zalihe te tvari.
In many ways, the story of the Great Phenol Plot would make a wonderful sort of early Hollywood film.
New York, 1915. Thomas Edison bio je u svoje doba poznat kao veliki izumitelj. Izumio je žarulju i fonograf, prvi komercijalni uređaj za reprodukciju zvuka. No za uspješnu proizvodnju trebao je fenol.
By 1915, Thomas Edison is also suffering from this shortage of phenol. Edison, being Edison and being a very bright fellow, discovers that you can synthesize phenol from benzene. And benzene is quite a common byproduct of the American oil industry by this point, so there's no shortage of that. So he sets up a factory in New Jersey. Very quickly, he's actually making more phenol than he needs.
Edisonova proizvodnja fenola ubrzo je privukla pozornost njemačke tvrtke Chemical Exchange.
So Edison has this surplus of phenol, and to make a profit, he decides he's going to sell it to this outfit called the Chemical Exchange.
Njezin je predstavnik u New Yorku bio Hugo Schweitzer.
What Edison doesn't realize is that this is a front that's been set up by Hugo Schweitzer, the German spy, and funded with money from the German embassy. The idea is that they're going to buy Edison's surplus of phenol, and in doing so, they're going to prevent the surplus reaching Britain and France so that they can make more explosives with it.
Edison je mjesecima izvozio 3 tone fenola na dan za proizvodnju aspirine u Njemačkoj. Činilo se da je njemačka spletka upalila.
So all of this looks like a great triumph for German espionage. And this is all very well until the 24th of July 1915, when Albert accidentally leaves his briefcase on a train. By this point, he's being followed by a US Secret Service officer. The officer picks up the briefcase, finds it's full of papers relating to the great phenol plot.
U to je doba Amerika razmatrala mogućnost ulaska u rat na strani saveznika protiv Njemaca.
And this is when it turns into a public scandal.
Zbog pritiska javnosti, Edison je prekinuo dogovor, no tek nakon što je izvezao dovoljno fenola za 20 milijuna kilograma eksploziva i zaradio milijune dolara.
In the end, the great phenol plot had a very negative effect on the relationship between Germany and America. It gave Americans the impression that Germans were agitating and doing all sorts of nefarious activities to try and prevent the US going to war.
Godine 1917. Amerikanci su ušli u rat na strani saveznika. Edisonov je ugled bio okaljan, no kako njegov dogovor s Njemcima, strogo uzevši, nije bio protuzakonit, izumitelj je nastavio živjeti u slavi i bogatstvu. Velika spletka s fenolom na našoj ljestvici na 10. mjestu. Slijedi niz smijelih tajnih planova za bijeg. U jeku Drugog svjetskog rata Njemci su imali 100.000 savezničkih ratnih zarobljenika. Kako bi izdvojili časnike, za koje su smatrali da bi mogli pokušati pobjeći, one najopasnije poslali su u poseban zatvor. Pokušaj bijega iz najzloglasnijeg utvrđenog dvorca u Njemačkoj na 9. su mjestu naše ljestvice. Planovi za bijeg iz Koldica. Rat. Drugi svjetski rat. Mjesto Koldic, Njemačka. Tajna. Više od 300 pokušaja bijega tijekom rata.
The Colditz castle itself is a very, very imposing medieval castle. It's white painted with red roofs, sitting on a hill above the village of Colditz. So it's a kind of fairy tale gone wrong for the people who are sent there, this kind of fairy tale grim castle.
Godine 1939. njemačka je vojska pretvorila dvorac Kolditz u strogo čuvan zatvor, jedini takav u Njemačkoj. Nalazio se u samom središtu Trećega rajha, više od 600 km od bilo koje granice. Godine 1939. 70 je Njemaca čuvalo svega 40 zatvorenika. Do 1942. ondje je bilo i 150 savezničkih zarobljenika. Hitlerov maršal Hermann Göring tvrdio je da je iz dvorca nemoguće pobjeći, no Njemci su imali posla s najodlučnijim savezničkim časnicima.
It was an escapers club of the greatest escapers, and if you want to cause yourself trouble, bring all of those men together, and that's what happened.
Među poznatim zarobljenicima bio je Douglas Bader, britanski zrakoplovni as. Kao i David Sterling, koji će poslije osnovati elitne specijalne postrojbe britanske vojske, SAS. Užurbana tajna industrija razvila se na mračnim stubištima i u zatvoreničkim sobama. Zatvorenici su izrađivali lažne dokumente, civilnu odjeću, odličja, lažno oružje i njemačke odore, iako su znali da se izlažu velikoj pogibli.
The Germans were entitled to shoot you dead if you tried to escape, and we all knew that. But at the same time, we knew that the rest of the British Army were ready to be wounded or killed at any time. So the least we could do was to take risks as well, because, you know, it's every British prisoner's duty to escape. It really was a question of working out how we could get out of the base.
Neki su se prerušavali u njemačke vojnike kako bi izašli na prijevaru. No najčešća metoda bijega iz Koldica bilo je kopanje tunela. Jedan je tunel bio prokopan kroz vinski podrum ispod zgrade i ravno kroz srednjovjekovne temelje dvorca. Bio je dug 44 metra i kopali su ga 8 mjeseci. I kad ih je samo nekoliko metara dijelilo od slobode, njemačka je ophodnja uočila ljestve na ulazu i cijeli je plan propao. No, dok su neki pokušavali pobjeći podzemnim tunelima, Drugi su nastojali iz koldica odletjeti.
The most extraordinary and perhaps the most desperate attempt was the idea of building a glider. This seems a bit harebrained. It was known as the Colditz Cock. It was actually constructed in lofts extremely high up in the castle, and the idea was this thing would carry two guys who would basically be thrown off the roof in this glider, glide down about 1,500 yards to some green space outside the castle, and then run like hell.
Jedrilica izrađena od podnih i krevetnih dasaka, te prekrivena plaktama, nikada nije poletjela. Rat je završio prije nego li su je časnici uspjeli iskušati. Ukupno je do završetka rata bilo više od 300 pokušaja bijega iz koldica i 30 zatvorenika to je uspjelo, zbog čega je postotak bjegunaca iz koldica među najvišima u ratu.
Colditz exemplifies absolutely the spirit of the Allies, this kind of Churchillian refusal to give in, this bulldog spirit. We will, fight them to the last. We will get home.
Na 9. su mjestu naše ljestvice tajni planovi bijega iz koldica. Sljedeći je strogo povjerljiv internetski napad. U 90-ima se internet proširio svijetom i otvorio posve novo bojište.
Over the last 100 years, we've seen a revolution in the use of military force in all sorts of ways. One of those ways is the use of the air. 100 years ago, we saw the use of space through the 60s, and now we have the use of cyberspace.
NATO je 2008. otvorio vlastiti centar za obranu od kibernetičkih napada.
Many people think that cyber attacks happen at the speed of light or at net speed. But in practice, what we're seeing is that it requires a lot of planning, it requires preparation, it requires intelligence sometimes to reach targets. So cyber attacks, in some ways like conventional military operations, require planning and preparation.
Prvi se veliki kibernetički napad na američku vojsku dogodio 1998. i upravo je on na našoj ljestvici. Nazvan je Moonlight Maze ili labirint pod mjesečinom. Tajna. Kibernetički napad. Meta. Povjerljivi podaci američke vojske. Napadači. Nepoznati.
Moonlight Maze is the FBI code name for the first big state-on-state cyber attack.
Godine 1998. članovi tima u američkoj zrakoplovnoj bazi u Ohaju otkrili su da im je narušena sigurnost podataka, a to nije bio prvi napad. Kontinuirano su bili hakirani dulje od 2 godine.
The Moonlight Maze attack was a puzzle for the investigators. They really didn't know what the attackers were after. So they started digging and started looking into what was going on. And after many, many months, one investigator said, "My God, I got it. They're using what's known as the Military Critical Technologies List. It's a long Department of Defense document that lists critical military technology."
Meta je bila elektronička pošta pojedinaca s popisa. Hakirani su računalni sustavi u Pentagonu. Među ukradenim podacima bile su pojedinosti o satelitskim kontrolnim sustavima, karte s vojnim postrojenjima, te proizvodnja oružja.
The targets of Moonlight Maze was a long list of government sites, especially military sites. They were going after helmet designs, after atmospheric data. They were taking practically everything they could, which made it really hard for the investigators, because how can you tell what somebody wants if they're taking everything? The list of files, an internal report put it, if you piled the files up, it would be as high as the Washington Monument.
Ali kako su to uspjeli učiniti?
There are many different ways to penetrate a target. There's not just one obvious way. Imagine a target like a large office building. The obvious way to get in is to walk up to the reception desk and say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm visiting person X, let me in. And if you do that in a clever way, the person behind the desk will actually let you in. You can also break in through the back door without talking to anybody. You can spot maybe a window that's open and just secretly climb in. All these equivalents exist online as well.
S vremenom su američki istražitelji, prateći digitalne tragove, došli do glavnog računala u Rusiji. No, naručitelj napada i dalje je nepoznat, a ruske vlasti opovrgavaju bilo kakvu povezanost s tim hakiranjem.
One of the most difficult problems for all cyber attacks is the problem of attribution. Who did it? How do you know who did it?
Američki obavještajci i dalje istražuju taj napad i kao jedan od prvih velikih internetskih napada u moderno doba, on zauzima 8. mjesto na našoj ljestvici. Slijedi tajna spletka kojom su nacisti uspjeli doći u New York.
The Second World War was definitely a hotbed for scheming. This is a total war. There has been no more violent war ever in the history of the world than the Second World War, and, no quarter given. And if you can use skullduggery and underhand tactics to give yourself an edge, then you're going to do it.
U prosincu 1941. Njemačka je objavila rat SAD-u. Amerika se pripremala za rat.
By the beginning of 1942, America's embryonic armaments industry is starting to kick into gear, and America has boasted about producing 50,000 aircraft a year, and suddenly, by that time, that is looking like that might be possible. So this is a major problem for the Nazis and for Germany, and they've got to do something about it.
Njemačka je odgovorila tajnom spletkom koja je na 7. mjestu naše top liste tajna. To je operacija Pastorius. Rat. Drugi svjetski rat. Mjesto SAD. Tajna. Misija s ciljem sabotaže američke infrastrukture.
It was an operation, it was a scheme, it was a plot to cause sabotage in the United States.
The idea is to send a team of saboteurs into the United States where they can cause mayhem, wreak havoc, blow things up, and sort of instigate a reign of terror.
This was Germany's effort, really, to bring the war home to the American people. This really is, in some ways, ahead of its time. This is happening in 1942. These are effectively sleeper cells who have been placed in America, in different parts of America, to attack public monuments, factories, power plants. And it is quite an alarming idea.
No, da bi splet biti provedena, najprije je valjalo odabrati i pripremiti agente.
The extraordinary thing about Pistorius, Operation Pistorius, is the 8 men they choose. I mean, it's just incredible. None of these people have worked for German intelligence before, so they're given a crash course in sabotage and how to be an agent. Yes, they're told about how to kind of, lay bombs and how to sort of pass yourself off and how to kind of spot if you're being trailed and all these kind of things. But it's all a bit half-cock and it's just not really thorough enough.
Unatoč minimalnoj poduci, agenti su poslani na zadatak. Njemačke su podmornice 12. lipnja 1942. prevezle 2 tima od po 4 osobe preko Atlantskog oceana. Jedan je tim iskrcan na Floridi, a drugi pokraj obale New Yorka. No, čim su se iskrcali u New Yorku, opazio ih je mladi obalni stražar i nacistički su se agenti uspaničili.
First of all, they sort of try and claim that they're fishermen that have got lost from Southampton, even though they're wearing German naval uniforms. Then he says to the Coast Guard, "You're not going to reveal who we are you? Or else I'm going to have to kill you." And the chap says, "Well, no, I won't." And he goes, "And here's a whole load of dollars." So he stuffs a whole load of dollars in his top pocket and runs off.
And then they caught the railroad, and they went to New York City, and they disappeared. So you have this rather surreal picture of 4 Nazi spies in hotels in New York City.
It's an extraordinary image, this idea that all these German spies are kind of sort of holed up in a hotel in the middle of New York City.
But by this time, the Coast Guardsmen had alerted the FBI, and the FBI were now on the trail of these 4 men. The biggest manhunt in American history was underway.
S obzirom na to da su se četvorica agenata skrivala u New Yorku, a ostala četvorica trebala su im se pridružiti, situacija se zakomplicirala. Vođa nacističkih agenata, Georg Dasch, promijenio je plan.
What 6 of the 8-man team don't know is that George Dasch has already decided to blow this operation. He's an anti-Nazi rather than pro-Nazi and wants absolutely nothing to do with it at all, and is using the whole operation as an excuse to get out.
He went to a payphone in Manhattan on the Upper West Side. He made a telephone call to the FBI. And he said, basically said, I'm your man.
Nakon što je uvjerio FBI da je to zaista on, s vremenom su uhvaćena sva 8 agenata. Na vojnom sudu 6 je određena smrtna kazna. Dasch i njegov pomagač osuđeni su na doživotni zatvor. Operacija Pastorius je propala. Američki predsjednik Franklin Roosevelt upozorio je naciju na novoga neprijatelja, špijune.
We know of new methods of attack. The Trojan horse, the fifth column that betrays a nation unprepared for treachery. Spies, saboteurs, and traitors are the actors in this new strategy.
Za Hitlera je neuspjela sabotaža bila prekretnica. Više se nikada nije pokušao potajno infiltrirati u SAD.
Hitler was furious at the failure of this, which he thought it was a huge PR disaster.
These men were sent to sabotage. They were sent to carry out sabotage. Not a single act of sabotage was carried out.
The whole thing was absolutely bonkers.
Operacija Pastorius na 7. mjestu naše ljestvice. Slijedi još jedan tajni plan za napad na Ameriku. Dok su nacisti pokušali sa sabotažom, Japan je planirao mnogo strašniji napad. Zvao se operacija Noćni trešnjeni cvjetovi. Rat. Drugi svjetski rat. Tajna. Biološki napad. Meta. Kalifornija, SAD.
Operation Cherry Blossom at Night, this was an amazing Japanese plan to sow death and destruction upon the mainland of the United States. The idea was quite simply to use biological warfare against the west coast of the US.
Za plan je ključan bio strogo povjerljiv laboratorij. Japan je okupirao Kinu 1931. i u Mandžuriji otvorio laboratorij za medicinska istraživanja. Zvao se Jedinica 731. I ondje su se događale strašne stvari.
The main thrust of their medical experiments was to see how the human body reacted in extreme conditions. Looking back on it, it seems utterly terrible. But they also conducted germ warfare experiments. They infected people with diseases like typhoid and typhus. They infected them with the plague.
Eksperimenti su čak uključivali i ispitivanje učinka bubonske kuge na ljude. Plan je bio proizvesti bombu koja bi ispustila bakterije na neprijateljsko stanovništvo. Buhe koje prenose kugu zarazile bi štakore i bolest bi se proširila. Glavna je meta bila Kalifornija. Jedino je pitanje bilo kako prenijeti bakterijsku bombu preko oceana. Jedno od rješenja, bombe će nositi baloni.
You would produce fleas infected with the plague bacteria, float them across and land them on American soil, and trigger, amongst American citizens, an epidemic of bubonic plague.
No, Japanci su imali još jednu metodu na raspolaganju. Bombe bi mogli nositi zrakoplovi koji bi polijetali iz podmornica nosača zrakoplova.
Japanese, the only country in the world to have submarine aircraft carriers during the Second World War. And this really was a very serious threat. These planes could be fitted with these special ceramic bombs and used to bomb Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Diego.
Rat je završio prije nego li je upotrebljena i jedna bomba s uzročnicima kuge. No, bili Japanci zaista proveli taj plan?
They did send a couple of incendiary bombs across to America, and I think given more time, they would have sent some of their infected fleas across in his balloons in the jet stream to land on American soil.
If the operation had been put into practice, it would have worked. And I think the devastation caused in American cities would have been truly terrifying. Thousands of people would have been infected with plague. Operation Cherry Blossoms at Night is probably one of the least known but most amazing and potentially horrendous operations undertaken by any of the belligerent powers in the Second World War.
Došli smo do 5 najvećih tajna ratovanja. Dosad smo vidjeli zbunjene nacističke špijune. Čuli smo o nemoralnim dogovorima i o tajnom kibernetičkom ratovanju. Slijede najveće obmane Drugoga svjetskog rata, tajna urota protiv Führera i najveća akcija krivotvorenja u povijesti. Sljedeći je na ljestvici jedan od najpoznatijih planova za bijeg. U travnju 1942. bio je otvoren novi logor za ratne zarobljenike 160 km jugoistočno od Berlina. Zvao se Stalag Luft 3.
Stalag Luft 3 was a German Air Force camp for Air Force prisoners. It was an officers' camp, so it held air crew, not only from the UK, but also from the US and France and Poland and many other countries that were involved on the Allied side.
Tijekom rata logor se postupno povećavao do 2,5 hektara i u njemu je bilo više od 10.000 zarobljenika. U ožujku 1943. skovan je tajni plan za bijeg 200 vojnika. Postoje poznat kao Veliki bijeg. Rat. Drugi svjetski rat. Mjesto. Logor za ratne zarobljenike u Njemačkoj. Tajna. Plan kopanja tunela za bijeg.
The Great Escape is probably the finest escape of the Second World War. The amount of engineering involved is quite staggering. These tunnels are hundreds of feet long. This required months and months and months of secret labor.
Plan koji je osmislio takozvani odbor za bijeg bio je ambiciozan i osmišljen tako da nadmudri vječito budne njemačke stražare.
This is the famous Great Escape itself. The idea of digging not one but 3 tunnels simultaneously. So if the Germans catch one, named Tom, Dick and Harry, they can then switch over to a different tunnel, and the Germans probably wouldn't suspect they were tunneling away at 3 completely different excavations at the same time.
Prikrivanje gradnje tunela pretvorilo se u stalnu igru mačke i miša s njemačkim stražarima.
It was evident to us that the Germans knew that there was a tunnel being built, and they'd searched the block several times, actually. You always think there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and that light's going to be home. We thought it was very, very difficult to escape from Germany. And probably less than 1% of people who got out of camps got home. We thought there'd always be a chance.
Tijekom 9 mjeseci kopanja upotrebljeno je sve što se u logoru moglo iskoristiti za gradnju tunela, uključujući 4000 krevetnih dasaka, 30 stolova i više od 2000 noževa, vilica i žlica. Bijeg je bio planiran za noć u petak 24. ožujka 1944.
They're now ready to go. The idea is to get out about 300 or so men in one go. They managed to take out about 76, get through the tunnel before the alarm is sounded.
A onda je počela potjera.
Probably 50,000 troops are involved in hunting down the 76 great escapers. Progressively, they're recaptured. Most escapes ended in failure. The idea really was to tie down German military resources in searching for them, and this is very successful.
U sljedećih 18 dana uhvaćeni su svi bjegunci, osim 3. Hitler je naredio da budu kažnjeni i 50 njih sudbina je bila zapečaćena.
Hitler issues an order that 50 should be shot. The idea being to prevent any further escapes from Allied POW camps.
Iako su se samo trojica uspjela spasiti, taj tajni plan bijega ušao je u povijest.
The Great Escape is well named. It was a great escape because of the daring, the bravery, and the ingenuity of the men who undertook this tremendous escape.
Sljedeća je na listi jedinstvena obmana koja je zavarala Hitlera. Godine 1943. Njemci su doživjeli poraz u Sjevernoj Africi, a trpjeli su i velike gubitke u Rusiji. Saveznici su željeli zadati još jedan udarac Hitlerovu u Europskom carstvu, pa je sljedeće bojište trebalo biti otvoreno na Sredozemlju.
The one person who is completely obsessed by the Mediterranean is Hitler. And Hitler is really, really nervous and always has been right from the outbreak of war of being attacked from multiple fronts.
Hitler se pitao gdje će se saveznici iskrcati. Dvije očite potencijalne lokacije bile su Sicilija i Grčka. Saveznički plan za obmanu Hitlera na 4. je mjestu ljestvice i to je jedna od najsmjelijih ratnih operacija. Operacija Mincemeat ili mljeveno meso. Rat. Drugi svjetski rat. Mjesto. Sredozemlje, Europa. Tajna. Obmana uoči savezničkog desanta na Siciliju.
Operation Mincemeat was a rather brilliant idea.
The idea of mincemeat was to get the Germans to think that the invasion would happen not in Sicily, which is where it was intended to invade, but in Sardinia or Greece.
Britanska obavještajna služba bacila se na posao. Jedan njezin ogranak bio je poznat kao povjerenstvo za obmane.
The Double Cross Committee and the whole Naval Intelligence Unit are really interesting because one of the key figures in that is Commander Ian Fleming, who later gets known for writing the Bond novels, of course. And really, the sky is the limit. You know, this is the Second World War. It doesn't matter how wacky it is, how wild it is. Just keep thinking, chaps, because you never know. One of your wild ideas might just have something that we can work with. The idea of Operation Mincemeat is that you plant a dead body that washes up in Spain. The Spanish intelligence service pick it up, pass it on to the Abwehr, German intelligence service, and on that are planted highly secret documents which suggest that the Allies are going to do their landing in Greece.
Barem je takav bio plan.
There was so much that could conceivably go wrong. You've got to first of all find a dead body.
You know, how do you do it so that it's not revealed that it's sort of, you know, died in a car crash or died some other way? How do you get a body that appears as though it's been drowned?
Kod londonskog mrtvozornika pronađeno je tijelo nekog skitnice. Velšanin Glinder Michael umro je od otrova za štakore, no nije bilo drugih naznaka uzroka smrti. Tada je počeo postupak prerušavanja. Dodijeljen mu je potpuno nov identitet. Odjenuli su ga u časničku odoru i ukrcali u podmornicu koja je plovila u Sredozemlje. Što je bio najvažniji trik? Za remen su mu privezali aktovku s lažnim pismima i planovima za desant.
It's really very complicated. There's a huge amount that can go wrong. And so they're trusting really a great deal to luck.
Prerušeno je tijelo 30. travnja 1943. izbačeno blizu španjolske obale, duž koje su operirali i nacistički agenti.
In actual fact, it's then discovered by a Spanish fisherman. Brings him to the shore. Details are then handed over to the Abwehr. The chief Abwehr officer in Spain then passes this on to the chief of the Abwehr in Berlin, who then passes it on to Hitler. So it really does get all the way to the top.
And in the end, the Germans swallowed the bait. They moved forces to Sardinia and they moved forces to Greece, and Sicily was weakened. In those terms, mincemeat achieved exactly what was wanted.
2 mjeseca nakon što su otkriveni lažni planovi, saveznici su izvršili desant na Siciliju i s vremenom zauzeli cijelo Sredozemlje.
The end result of Operation Mincemeat, of course, is that a dead body washed up on a shore was able to save the lives of thousands of Allied soldiers as they stormed ashore in Sicily.
Operacija Mljeveno meso na 4. je mjestu top liste ratnih tajna. Slijedi još jedna urota koja je utrla put konačnoj savezničkoj pobjedi. Najsloženija vojna obmana u Drugom svjetskom ratu bila je ona tijekom priprema za iskrcavanje u Normandiji. Zvala se Operacija Fortitude ili Hrabrost. Rat. Drugi svjetski rat. Mjesto. Ujedinjeno kraljevstvo. Tajna. Obmana uoči dana D.
Operation Fortitude was a remarkably complex intelligence and deception operation.
It's difficult to quantify exactly how important Fortitude was, but we do know that it was important.
Operation Fortitude was effectively the cover story for D-Day, for the invasion of Normandy.
U lipnju 1944. obje su strane znale da je saveznički desant na Francusku samo pitanje vremena. Njemačka je pripremala obranu, no pitanje je bilo gdje će akcija početi. Potencijalne lokacije za iskrcavanje bile su Calais i Normandija. Saveznici su potajno planirali iskrcavanje u Normandiji, no željeli su obmanuti Njemce kako bi oni mislili da će to učiniti u Calaisu.
Like all good deception operations, there has to be an element of truth into it, something that the other side will believe. And that's what happened.
Kako bi obmana uspjela, saveznici su morali pripremiti lažne desantne snage.
The armed forces got Ealing Studios near London to produce a whole lot of dummy tanks and dummy aircraft and so on.
Everything that could be put into place to convince the German aerial reconnaissance and German signals units that we have this vast army ready, so it looks obviously that we're going to cross the channel.
Osim potpune povjerljivosti, za obmanu je bilo ključno da saveznici odrede poznatog generala za upravljanje fantomskim snagama.
General Patton, he's commanding a vast phantom army, Patton's phantom army, based in East Anglia.
So by creating an artificial army group based in eastern England that looked like it was going to threaten the Pas de Calais, with Patton as its head, the Germans, of course, fell for that hook, line and sinker.
Hitler and the German High Command were convinced that the Allies were going to try to land in the Pas de Calais.
Savezničke snage su krenule prema Normandiji 6. lipnja 1944.
And so the Germans were, first of all, taken quite by surprise. But really, this is where Operation Fortitude came into its own. This is where it became important.
Dvostruki špijun koji je radio za saveznike dojavio je Njemcima da flota koja plovi preko Engleskog kanala nije prava desantna, nego samo obmana koja treba zavarati Njemce.
They must not send reinforcements down to Normandy, because that's exactly what the British wanted them to do.
Hitler and the High Command were convinced that the Allies were going to attack Calais. And that if they attacked Normandy, it would just be a feint. It would just be, to get them to take their eye off the ball.
Because Hitler was the decision maker for the Germans, and he was so convinced, he elected to leave the 15th Army in its places, defending the Pas de Calais, rather than moving them to reinforce the German efforts in Normandy.
Kad su se savezničke snage iskrcale u Normandiji, suočile su se sa snažnim otporom s njemačkih položaja. Teškom su mukom pobijedili uz gubitak 1000 vojnika. No, da nije bilo tajne operacije Hrabrost, Njemci bi se bili mnogo snažnije oduprli.
Anybody looking at the effort to construct the Phantom Army for Operation Fortitude, the balsa wood tanks and so on, the inflatable aircraft or whatever, would think this was something of a joke, in fact. But Operation Fortitude was not a joke. It was remarkably successful. It achieved just the level of deception that was wanted.
Operacija Hrabrost na 3. je mjestu naše ljestvice. Slijedi tajni nacistički plan koji je trebao slomiti britansko gospodarstvo. Godine 1959. na jezeru Toplitz u Austriji u tijeku je bila jedinstvena ronilačka operacija. Još od kraja Drugog svjetskog rata širile su se glasine da su nacisti u jezero bacili velike količine zlata i blaga. Ronioci su pronašli desetke zapečaćenih kutija. No u njima nije bilo zlato, nego novac, milijuni novčanica britanskih funta. Potjecale su iz najveće operacije krivotvorenja u povijesti. To je bila operacija Bernhardt. Rat. Drugi svjetski rat. Mjesto, koncentracijski logor Sachsenhausen, Njemačka. Tajna. Golema operacija krivotvorenja britanskih novčanica.
Operation Bernhard was a plan to forge lots and lots of British sterling notes. The idea was that you would just undermine the British economy.
This was the greatest single counterfeiting scheme in history.
It was economic warfare, that was the idea.
Nakon početka rata, obje su strane potajno razmišljale o napadima na neprijateljevu valutu. Churchill je razmatrao krivotvorenje Reichsmarke, no odustao je. Nacisti su također pokušali krivotvoriti britanske novčanice, no prvi pokušaji nisu dali nikakve rezultate.
This is a very different, very interesting side to the war. It's almost a different war in itself. You've got a war that people recognize. They know where they are with battles and groups of people and technology. But this is a much quieter, whispered war. This is to do with currency. It's to do with economics. It's to do with who has a greater spending power.
Godine 1942. SS-ovci su potaknuli novu operaciju pod vodstvom Bernharda Krügera. On je bio suočen s dvojakim problemom. Za uspješno masovno krivotvorenje trebao je vješte radnike, a cijela operacija morala ostati tajna.
Actually, what they decide is that there's enough prisoners in concentration camps with these special skills that they can use them to do the job. Once you've done this, the plan always was to then execute all the people that have done it. So it's a really grim and sinister plot from start to finish.
Više od 140 ljudi prevezeno je u koncentracijski logor Sachsenhausen. U blok 19 postavljeni su tiskarski strojevi.
It's quite extraordinary to think about the atmosphere that must have been inside the workshop, inside the factory, because their best chance of staying alive is to do it well. Because as long as they're valuable to the Nazis, as long as they're valuable to Kruger, they're more likely to be kept alive.
Izazov s kojim su krivotvoritelji bili suočeni nikad prije nije bio svladan. Trebali su podmetnuti engleskoj banci u Londonu i njezinim partnerskim institucijama diljem svijeta velik broj krivotvorenih novčanica.
The Bank of England thinks that British notes are unforgeable. So the really big problems facing any would-be forgers is A, how do you crack the serial codes, and B, how do you provide the paper to look authentic, and C, how do you then impose the watermarks and all the various bits you need to give it that stamp of authenticity.
Nakon višemjesečnog rada, dio novčanica poslan je u švicarsku banku, gdje su provjerene i proglašene originalima, pravima. Krivotvorine su bile uspješne. Tiskanje nevjerojatan broj novčanica.
These things are being printed around the clock. I mean, some 9 million banknotes are forged. I mean, 9 million. It's just an absolutely extraordinary number at a street value of some £134 million, which by today's standards is billions of pounds.
The original plan was to drop it on Britain, to wreck the British economy by flooding it with these fake notes. But that soon goes out of the window because the Blitz has ended and there aren't as many missions being carried out over Britain as there were in the past. So what instead they decide to do is use it for all sorts of SS operations.
Oružje se kupovalo za gotovinu. Pijuni su svoje dogovore plaćali funtama.
Banknotes turned up all over the place. I mean, the British first got suspicious when they found them in Tangiers in North Africa.
They pay for the rescue of Mussolini from his hotel up in the mountains. After Mussolini is forced to resign, he's then taken prisoner and he's rescued by the Nazis, and the rescue is paid for with this counterfeit money.
But they managed to sort of get absolutely everywhere. They kind of sort of spread like a virus.
By 1945, something like a third of the banknotes, the British banknotes in circulation around the world, were counterfeit, were as a result of this operation. So we're talking something on a massive scale, I mean, absolutely extraordinary scale. And this caused great fear in Britain.
Pod kraj rata nacisti su bili suočeni s porazom, pa su premjestili krivotvoritelje i dokaze o operaciji na sigurno mjesto u Alpama, gdje su s vremenom ostavili zatvorenike i pobjegli. Nakon rata, saveznici su 3 godine držali Bernharda Krügera u pritvoru, no na posljedku su ga pustili i on je poživio do 1989. Ali što se dogodilo s novcem? Velik dio nacisti su bacili u jezero Toplic, gdje je pronađen mnogo godine poslije. Operacija Bernhard na drugome je mjestu naše top liste ratnih tajna. Na 10. mjestu velika urota s fenolom. Bjegovi iz Koldica na 9. su mjestu. Na 8. je tajna internetska urota Moonlight Maze. Operacija Pastorius je na 7. mjestu. Na 6. se nalazi operacija Noćni trešnjini cvjetovi. Na 5. Veliki bijeg. Na 4. operacija Mljeveno meso. Velika obmana u oči dana D, operacija Hrabrost, na 3. mjestu. Na 2. je operacija Bernhard, a sad ćemo otkriti najveću tajnu u povijesti modernog ratovanja. Do 1944. rat se bio preokrenuo u korist saveznika. Neki njemački časnici počeli su najvećim problemom smatrati samog Führera. Znali su da bi, ubijuli ga, oni mogli preuzeti vlast. Tajna urota protiv Hitlera na 1. mjestu naše top liste bila je poznata kao Operacija Valkira. Rat. Drugi svjetski rat. Tajna. Planirani atentat. Meta. Adolf Hitler.
The aim of the assassination plot was to bring the war to an end. What led senior members of the Third Reich to want to assassinate Hitler was their utter certainty that he was leading Germany to destruction.
Plan je bio sljedeći. Kad Hitler bude ubijen, njemačka će vojska preoteti vlast od njegovih suradnika.
The German army would have taken charge of the war fully. They would have arrested most of the Nazi leadership and got rid of the Nazi party, closed down the concentration camps and released the inmates inside. Then they would have attempted to negotiate with the Western Allies.
Autor toga plana bio je pukovnik Klaus von Stauffenberg. Bio je potomak aristokratske obitelji i isprva odan nacist, no godine ratovanja uzele su svoj danak.
He saw that persecution of the Jews was an evil thing and that it would inevitably lead to Germany's destruction.
Ali atentat na Führera nije bio lak zadatak. Neprestano je bio dobro čuvan i okružen odanim ljudima.
Hitler was the subject of over 40 serious assassination attempts before and during the Second World War, and seemed to lead some kind of charmed life. They used to joke about him having a guardian devil, and I think that's true to a certain degree.
No ovog su puta Stauffenberg i drugi urotnici bili uvjereni da se mogu približiti Führeru.
They knew that he held a situation conference at the same time every day when he was at his headquarters. The plan was that Stauffenberg would plant a bomb in the conference room, which, when it detonated, would kill Hitler and probably everybody else there.
Plan je proveden 20. srpnja 1944.
When Count von Stauffenberg enters the room, he places his briefcase very close to Hitler, leaning against a table support. And then, of course, the bomb goes off after Stauffenberg has left the room. Hitler is blown across the room, but the majority of the blast is taken by the table and also by the room itself. So the explosion is dissipated out and absorbed by the furniture.
Uvjeren da je Führer poginuo u eksploziji, Stauffenberg je odletio u Berlin. No tada je stigla vijest da je Hitler preživio.
The problem that he had then was that many of the conspirators got cold feet. They were prepared to act if Hitler was dead, and they were then absolved of their oath of loyalty to him. They weren't prepared to risk their own necks if Hitler was still alive.
Za nekoliko sati Stauffenberg je uhićen i njegova je sudbina bila zapečaćena.
As the plan unraveled that night, Stauffenberg was taken out into the courtyard and he was shot.
Ukupno je više od 7.000 ljudi uhićeno zbog sudjelovanja u uroti. Nakon namještenih suđenja, pogubljeno ih je više od 4.000.
The July bomb plot came within a hair's breadth of killing Hitler. Literally, it's only because of the placement of the bomb behind a very thick desk leg on this huge desk that Hitler was leaning on that he was saved. Otherwise, he would have been killed. There is absolutely no doubt about that.
Hitleru je u eksploziji stradala ruka. Nekoliko dana poslije, Führer je posjetio generale ozlijeđene u neuspjelom atentatu. Operacija Valkira na prvome mjestu ljestvice. 10 tajna koje su promijenile ratovanje. 10 tajna koje su promijenile svijet.